Ron Howard. Howard's production company with Brian Grazer, Imagine Entertainment, just inked a huge deal.
When Ron Howard decided to speak openly about the creative problems behind his latest movie project, it shocked everyone in Hollywood. For months, people had been talking quietly about fights on the movie set, arguments about the script and who should be cast, and rumors that Howard had even quit the project completely. But when Howard finally told the truth about what really happened, the whole movie industry stopped and listened. The conversations that had been happening in private meetings and on social media suddenly became a huge topic that everyone was talking about. Other directors, movie critics, and fans all had to change how they thought about one of the most respected filmmakers in the business. Howard started by explaining that making movies with other people is complicated and messy. Even the most experienced professionals can find themselves in difficult situations when they care deeply about a project, but also have to deal with business pressures from movie studios. From the very beginning of planning his movie, Howard had a very personal story in mind that would challenge both his own creative ideas and what the studio bosses expected from him. What happened next was like walking on a tightrope. Howard had to fight for actors who weren't famous yet, refuse to make the movie's important themes simpler when asked, and insist on filming in faraway places that were much harder to work in than anyone expected. News reports and people in the movie business had made it sound like Howard was fighting with every department head on the movie, but his side of the story was more complicated than that. The arguments weren't because Howard had a big ego, but because he truly believed in his vision. He was desperately trying to protect what he felt was the heart and soul of the story he wanted to tell. According to Howard, every conversation about cutting the budget or changing the filming schedule carried a fear underneath. He was afraid that watering down his original idea would betray the very reason he had chosen to tell this story in the first place. Howard admitted that this fear sometimes made him lose his usual calm attitude, causing him to get frustrated in ways that weren't normal for him. As word of his honest statements spread, it became clear that the effects would go far beyond just his one movie. For new directors who were watching and learning, Howard's honesty was both inspiring and scary. Today's movie business is increasingly controlled by decisions based on numbers and data, where test audience scores and streaming service algorithms often matter more than artistic goals. Yet here was a famous filmmaker, someone who had made some of the most loved movies of the past 40 years, publicly talking about the tension between art and business and challenging the idea that directors must always give in to what the market wants. Movie studios paid attention too. In a time when every decision to make a movie is carefully examined by shareholders and market experts, Howard's honest discussion about walking away from profitable projects highlighted a growing worry. There was concern that being too afraid to take risks might kill creativity at its source. If a filmmaker as respected as Howard could consider abandoning a high-profile project in the name of keeping his artistic integrity, what message did that send to mid-level directors and people making their first movies? The answer seemed obvious. Protecting creative vision, even if it meant giving up guaranteed money, was a risk worth taking. Film schools and artistic communities immediately grabbed onto his statements as a battle cry. Classes about negotiating with studios and lectures about creative freedom started appearing on campuses everywhere. Students picked apart Howard's account, studying the moments when he chose to fight back and the strategies he used to defend his vision. Questions that once seemed theoretical became urgent real-world problems. How far should a director go in resisting pushy studio executives? What actual compromises can be made without putting a project's funding at risk? These became serious dilemmas that film students and professionals had to consider. Perhaps the most important effects appeared among regular moviegoers, who have become increasingly doubtful of behind-the-scenes reporting. For years, people who watch movies have accepted that films go through endless changes, with final versions often transformed to appeal to mass audiences. Howard's openness pulled back the curtain, showing the raw negotiations and creative battles that shape every major movie production. Fans found themselves looking again at blockbuster disappointments and critical successes, wondering whether the films they loved might have been completely different if their creators had the courage to resist commercial demands. Social media platforms exploded with renewed energy as users debated the ethics of creative control. Some people argued that directors have a responsibility to deliver crowd-pleasing entertainment that funds future passion projects, while others insisted that the soul of cinema lies in pure artistic expression. At the center of the debate was a simple question: who ultimately owns a film's soul, the director or the audience? Howard's revelation forced people to think seriously about this, inviting audiences to consider their own role in demanding formulaic entertainment. Trade publications rushed to publish opinion pieces, analyzing every detail of his surprising admission. Some commentators warned that his stance risked making studio bosses and financiers angry, potentially limiting his access to big-budget blockbuster films. Others praised it as a brilliant move, suggesting that the very act of speaking out would cement his status as a visionary willing to sacrifice safety for truth. In industry terms, it was a high-stakes move with potential ripple effects across the movie business's power structure. Casting agents stopped to reconsider how they pitched projects to attract talent. If a director of Howard's reputation could find himself at odds with scripts and schedules, how might emerging actors handle similar tensions? The line between creative collaboration and conflict had never seemed thinner. Agents began advising their clients to negotiate not only money, but also creative input, insisting on contract terms that would allow actors to review scripts and challenge directorial decisions when necessary. Streaming services, always hungry for exclusive content, found new reason to court directors. In a world where theatrical releases can depend on franchise familiarity, the promise of unlimited artistic freedom became a powerful bargaining tool. Industry insiders began whispering about multi-million-dollar deals made not just based on audience numbers, but on the promise that directors would receive final cut privileges. What had once been a rare luxury suddenly became normalized as a reasonable request, showing the transformative power of Howard's public confession. Beyond the mechanics of making movies, his decision to speak out touched on something deeper: the changing role of the artist in society. In an era where creators are expected to be activists, brand ambassadors, and public intellectuals, his choice to address the inner workings of Hollywood highlighted a broader shift. Audiences want authenticity not only in performance, but in process. Documentaries, commentaries, and behind-the-scenes footage have long appealed to movie lovers. But Howard's statement bridged the gap between marketing material and genuine disclosure, elevating the conversation to one about trust and respect between artist and audience. Critics of his move warned that the moment of honesty might overshadow the art itself. Yet supporters argued that the two couldn't be separated. They said that understanding the struggles that shaped a film makes its impact stronger, allowing viewers to appreciate the victories and compromises woven into every frame. By lifting the veil on creative friction, Howard invited audiences not just to watch a film, but to engage with its process, creating a sense of shared ownership that goes beyond just passively consuming entertainment. As the excitement died down, academics began theorizing about a possible major change. Could the film industry be on the edge of a new era in which transparency became part of the creative agreement? If directors routinely reveal their battles with studios, might that lead to a more collaborative, less hostile environment? Or would it breed cynicism with every decision examined for hidden motives? Either way, the conversation had fundamentally changed. The silent acceptance of studio executive notes had been replaced by an expectation of honest exchange. Across the Atlantic, European directors used his revelation to support arguments for stronger artistic protections under local filmmaking grants. In places where public funding helped support independent cinema, policymakers began citing his example to justify policies protecting directorial rights. What was once a local policy debate now had a new champion in the form of a Hollywood legend, showing the global impact of a single confession. Film festivals also took notice. Programmers considered special panels dedicated to the filmmaker-studio relationship, inviting voices from every part of the industry to participate. The subject went beyond individual projects, becoming a way to examine the evolving identity of cinema itself. Those discussions, often limited to small theaters and Academy C conferences, suddenly gained mainstream importance thanks to the authority that came with Howard's status and the intrigue surrounding his decision to break rank. Howard's revelation represents more than just one director's struggle with a single project. It symbolizes a broader conversation about the future of filmmaking, the balance between art and commerce, and the relationship between creators and audiences. His willingness to speak honestly about the challenges facing modern filmmakers has opened a door that may never be closed again, fundamentally changing how we think about the movies we watch and the people who make them.